This is the Sheff United way, and today we are talking all about the big game on the horizon, the Sheffield derby. United take on Wednesday at Hillsborough this coming Sunday, and we are asking the question, how is this game going to play out? What are Wednesday going to try and do to counter United, and how do United make sure that they show they are on a higher level, they are the better team, and that they want to go out and win this game of football to keep us right up there at the top of the league?
Ole, ole, ole. Ole, ole, ole. Ole, ole, ole.
Yes, indeed, it is a huge game on the horizon. The second Steel City derby of the season. Of course, United winning the first one at Bramall Lane 1-0. Thanks to that man putting the ball in the Wednesday net, 𝗣𝗿𝗲𝗕. Now, as we sit here, as I record this is before the games that are being played in the Championship on Wednesday night. So after United's 1-1 draw with Bristol City, United sit top of the Championship. Even if Leeds can win their game in hand on Wednesday night, United will still have won the joint most points in the league. They'll have won more games of football than anybody else in the Championship, and we will start the game on Sunday 26 points ahead of our City rivals. United's goal difference is 29 goals better than Wednesday's, and while Wednesday have scored more goals, United have conceded less than half the amount of goals that Wednesday have conceded so far this season. So the first part of this video is all going to be about United. As we've just said there in the stats, just factually at this stage, have been the much better team between the two so far this season. So what could Wednesday do to try and get themselves a chance to win this game of football? Well, they have had a pretty good week. 2 wins away from home on the road. The one on Tuesday night saw them come back from 2-0 down at half-time to win 3-2. Since Danny Röhl has become Wednesday's manager, they have got a really good record in terms of the points that they've won. They've got an upper mid-table record in terms of the way that they've been progressing, but they've also become a really interesting team to talk about and to watch tactically, because they often swap out the way that they're trying to play, both in-game, but also dependent on the opponent. Danny Röhl very clearly has quite an idealistic position for how he wants to play. He wants Wednesday playing possession, controlled football, and he's trying to build a team that's capable of doing that. However, quite often what you see in game is they very quickly become a counter-attacking team built off the back of a big man up top, using the pace of their wingers to really start to hurt teams and to try and get their key men involved in dangerous areas rather than letting them just pass the ball between themselves in their own half. Against Norwich, that basically sums up this entire approach. They tried to play idealistic football the way that they want to set up, using Bannon and Shea Charles as 2 deep midfielders and using them to try and control the tempo of the game. Norwich immediately got on top of them, and Norwich were 2-0 up in that first half, leading to Wednesday having to make significant changes. Off came Shea Charles, and off came somebody else whose name has completely abandoned me because my notes are nowhere near as sufficient as they should be. And in their place, on came Michael Smith and Nathaniel Calabar. Now, Michael Smith in particular is the one here that I think we want to focus on about the changes that it makes to Wednesday's system. They can go very long to a very, very big man. He is one of the biggest strikers that you're going to face in the Championship. He's excellent at controlling the ball on his chest, at winning flick-ons, but he's also got a tidy feet for a big man. Pattern pending, let's say. That's what everybody likes to say. Good feet for a big man. And indeed, he is a dangerous player, and particularly for United at this moment in time, when we think about the way that United's season has gone and the changes that are in place now from when we played Wednesday earlier in the season. The big one is this glaring hole at the centre of Sheffield United's defence, which is the loss of 𝗲𝗲𝗄𝗏. When Wednesday came to Bramall Lane, United were pretty much in control of that game until they brought on Michael Smith. He pulled on to 𝗚𝗏, and basically what he did is what he's going to try and do on Sunday. He bullied 𝗚𝗏 to make sure that he won all of the first touches. He was always chesting it down, laying it off to another man. He was always winning that first ball. At which point, using his game intelligence, 𝗲𝗲𝗄𝗏 said to 𝗚𝗏, "Get out of the way. I'm going to mark him." From that point on, 𝗄𝗏 dominated that physical battle and meant that Michael Smith couldn't really have the same impact on the game that he'd had in the first 5 or 10 minutes after coming on as a sub. We now don't have 𝗲𝗲𝗄𝗏 to be able to make that intelligent decision, to say to the others, don't worry, I've got this. And that's something that worries me quite a lot, because we've seen that happen already this season. Let's, for example, look at the game against Portsmouth, where United Anybody who watched that game, United won it 2-1, but everybody knows that was a poor performance from United and that we were very lucky to get away with it, because what Portsmouth did is they had a big man up front, 𝗏𝗿𝗵𝗴 in this instance. He backed into Robinson and Aniel and forced them back towards their own goal. By pushing the centre-halves back towards United's goal, what that did was create a huge gap from the centre-halves to the central midfielders, which their three attacking midfielders could then use to try and generate space and build momentum on driving United back. What it also did was meant that when they played the ball out to the wing to 𝗏𝗏𝗴, he then had a field day, could do anything he wanted because he got free space to run into. The fullback had to drop deep to cover the offside trap, and therefore there was space for him to generate momentum before going around his fullback. That's what Michael Smith's going to try and do. They're going to want 𝗍𝗍𝗫 out on that wing, receiving the ball with space to run into. Once he starts, he's a really effective dribbler who can get past his man. His delivery and his end product isn't always there, but we cannot allow him to be whipping balls into the box, be having easy opportunities, because if we do that, Michael Smith will just bully our centre-halves and will really cause us all kinds of problems. So while Wednesday will be looking at that Portsmouth game and thinking that maybe that's the blueprint, United have got to learn from that game. Now, what's the way we can learn from that? How can we prevent this happening? Well, quite easily. The first one would be if Aniel or Jack Robinson could grow a foot. If they could just be a foot taller when we kick off on Sunday, that would solve all of our problems. However, more realistically, I think what United need to actually do is look at a plan to close the gap between the defence and the central midfield. When Smith pulls off onto one of the two centre-halves, it's going to be trying to push United back towards their own box. That means the role of the midfielders, whether it's Sousa or 𝗏𝗏𝗏 who comes into that position, will be to close that gap. Make sure that in that little space that they're trying to create, the pocket between midfield and defence, there's no space for 𝗍𝗏𝗏, for Josh Windass to pick up the ball with time. It's always got to be contested. We've always got to make sure that it is really difficult. There's also a huge role for Aniel and Robinson, because while they can't grow a foot, what they can do is make sure that it's never easy for Michael Smith. They can try to get in front of him. You can have one of them blocking it off while the other one goes and attacks the ball. We've got to make sure that when he's trying to bring the ball down on his chest, it's always uncomfortable and never easy. He's also all arms and legs as he's going. Make sure that if he's doing this, you get the foul, you win the free kick. We know that referees penalise big men when they're up front like that. We've seen it in red and white so many times. So we have got to make sure that he's not finding it easy to just control that ball and bring other players into the game. That's going to be Wednesday's game plan. That's the only way they can approach this. A lot of times this season, they've played 5 at the back. I don't think they will in this one. I think they've got too many injuries at centre-half. So they'll play 4 at the back. They'll still want the wing-backs to push forward, but they won't be quite as aggressive. They'll want to use Bannon and Charles to really try and control that play. Make sure that if they can't hit Smith, they'll try and get it out to those wings early, again, to try and get 𝗍𝗏𝗏 isolated one-on-one with his fullback. But United, I think, have got a perfect setup to try and contain that. We've done that in so many games this season. If they try to play the possession game through the middle, we will be able to counter it, because the running of Callum O'Hare, the running of Tyrese Campbell will make a huge difference. It's all about countering the threat of the big man up front, whether it's Michael Smith, who I think is the bigger threat, but also Patterson. United have got a huge job on with those centre-halves. So that's what I think Wednesday are going to try and do, and some ideas of how United could counter it. But more importantly, I think United can learn lessons from what they've done already this season. And in particular, I think there's huge lessons that we can learn from the way we approach the game against Bristol City on Tuesday night. And I think that gives us the perfect blueprint, not only to counter Wednesday's threat, but to prove to everybody that actually we're better than them. We can go out there, play our game, and if we play to our levels, we will win this game of football. So against Bristol City on Tuesday night, Wilder reflected post-game that he felt that the energy levels just weren't there. United were miles off it in terms of the way they came into that game. And particularly in midfield, we allowed way too much control to Bristol City to allow them to sort of just control the pace and the tempo the game was being played at. From a tactical perspective, I think there's really 3 key lessons that United can learn that will take us from maybe being a bit concerned to a team that will just dominate this game on Sunday, because we've got it in us, and I think this is how we do it. So the first lesson that I think we need to learn, and the issue we want to address, is Hamza Choudhury and the role of United's central midfield. Now, due to the injury picked up by 𝗍𝗍𝗏 Sousa against Preston, Choudhury has then had to come into the team and play in that central midfield role, and he started alongside 𝗍𝗍𝗏 against Bristol City. Now, for anybody who watched this game, anybody who was in the ground in particular, Choudhury played this role, let's say, a little bit different to how 𝗍𝗏𝗏 Sousa has been playing it so far this season. It had a huge impact on the way United were trying to build up with the ball and on the way that we defended without it. Now, what that means in practice is that what Choudhury did was drop so unbelievably deep. United were effectively playing 3 centre-halves with the ball. You had Holding, Chowdhury, Robinson just stood in a line together. And so when we were trying to pass it through midfield, what would happen is 𝗍𝗍𝗍 would become isolated. He wasn't really able to find the pocket of space because they just had 3 midfielders who could swarm him. And it meant that we weren't able to break the lines the way that we have done so effectively in previous games. Now, at moments, it worked really well doing it this way because we were able to drag Bristol City out, which meant there was spacing behind for 𝗍𝗍𝗏. We'll come to that one in just a little bit. But it also meant that when United lost the ball, we lost it with our midfield deep. We were sat really deep. So Bristol City were picking it up with space to run into and space where they could create. Now, Chowdhury regularly wins his tackles and one-on-one defending is outstanding. But because he was so deep, it meant that all of this pressure was 10 yards closer to the United goal than it would have been if 𝗍𝗍𝗍 was playing the role in the way that he does. That 10 yards takes United from being a team who can maybe spring a counter, from being a team who can actually just regain control of the possession and just pass it around themselves, to a team who are suddenly under pressure. As soon as he wins that tackle, they can just press straight onto your centre-halves who aren't confident on the ball, and that caused us a few problems on Tuesday night. So I think the first thing that United really want to do is address that situation. If 𝗍𝗍𝗍 still isn't fit on Sunday, then we need to tell Chowdhury you need to move 10 yards further forward. When United have got the ball, we want you as an option in midfield so that we've got sort of dragging their midfield out of position, giving them somebody else to think about, rather than making it really easy for them by sitting in a line towards the edge of United's box. I also think he's going to have a really crucial role in that defensive structure that we talked about, trying to cover the knockdowns from Michael Smith. Because he's got to be the one who closes and covers that space. If he's dragging the defenders back, then Chowdhury has to cover whatever run comes in the middle. He's the one who's following Windass. He's the one who's checking the block out to 𝗍𝗍𝗍, making sure that there's no easy ball going into that channel. So I think it's all about bravery for me. It's about saying to Chowdhury, when we've got the ball, you have to be braver. You have to step forward. That's the key lesson from Bristol City, is that our midfield has to play around the halfway line and in front. We can't allow them to get dragged deeper and deeper and deeper, because all it did was ask for trouble and in the end created the pressure that created the goal against us. Now, the second area that I think United have got a key lesson to learn, not just from Bristol City, but from a few games that we've played recently, is what we do with our wingers, because there is a huge wing-back conundrum whenever 𝗍𝗍𝗍 plays in this team at the moment. Now, you'll all recognise this situation. They've got the ball with their centre-halves. They're passing it between themselves. The central midfielder drops in to receive the pass. 𝗍𝗍𝗍 goes inside to press the central midfielder. They knock it back to the defender, and there's a wing-back who stood around the halfway line saying, "Hiya, I've got half a pitch here where I'm the only player stood in it because 𝗍𝗍𝗍's gone inside. 𝗍𝗍𝗍 or Clark have followed the winger who started to cut inside, and there is so much space exposed down their left-hand side." That's something that United have to cover in this game against Wednesday. Because what they're going to try and do is push forward 𝗍𝗍𝗍, who's likely to start at left back, or Marvin Johnson if he gets in there. And they're going to really want to push that and make sure that if 𝗍𝗍𝗍 is dragged inside, they want to spread the wings. When they're going to use a big striker, we really cannot afford to give them easy opportunities to be getting the ball in the box, because it's always just going to be creating more and more pressure and more chances for them to be able to go forwards. For me, the way that United want to counter this is that you say, 𝗍𝗏 and Campbell, you press the centre-halves. They cannot have an easy pass coming into midfield or out wide, but 𝗍𝗍𝗍 or 𝗍𝗏, whoever plays on this side, has to cover the fullback. You can't have them getting dragged inside to look at Bannon or to mark Shea Charles, because if they do, it just creates too easy of a passing channel to come down the wing. So instead, 𝗍𝗍𝗍 needs to take his role, step forward to put the pressure on Bannon, make sure he's got no easy way of dictating the play, but also means there's just no easy pass that brings them straight into danger zones coming down the wing. So that is how United need to counter this, and how we've got to learn the lessons of the mistakes that we've made in previous games. No easy pass to the wing, and make sure your midfielders are covering that run, applying the pressure to go deep, because that's the way that you start to cause Wednesday some real problems, because otherwise it's just too easy for them to always get out and ease any pressure that we're starting to put on their back line. The final one is the most difficult to resolve, if I'm being honest, because I think this is United's biggest strength, but also something that's becoming a little bit of United's biggest weakness. Tyrese Campbell and the 60-minute problem. Tyrese Campbell is fantastic. He just is. Everything that United have done that has been successful in recent months, he has been a really key part of it. But it is starting to be noticeable and become a little bit of a difficult habit to break, that when he gets subbed off after 60 to 65 minutes, United's performance level goes like that. when Campbell's on the pitch, we've got a threat. We're controlling the ball. We've got control of the game in midfield. We're able to look for opportunities and create chances. 𝗬𝗏 𝗵𝗵 goes off, and all of a sudden, United are penned in their own half, unable to get out. We're not able to find the options or be able to really stretch the pitch to give the other team something to think about. Now, originally, I've really harshly, apparently, it turns out, been blaming Tom Cannon for this. Because whenever he's come off the bench, I've always said, he's just not involved enough. He's not doing the job. He's not able to get the ball. He's not able to hold it up. He's not doing what we need him to do in that position. But then against Bristol City, Tom Cannon didn't come on. 𝗤𝗏𝗴 came on to play that role. He came on instead of 𝗬𝗏 𝗵𝗵. And still I was sat there and I was saying, he's just not involved. He's not picking up the ball. He's not winning his challenges. He's not holding it up and bringing other players into play. And it became quite clear, actually, it dawned on me in that moment that it's not about the player coming on. It is all about the player who is going off. Because 𝗬𝗏 𝗵𝗵 has a key skill that none of these subs have or bring to the team, and that is all about his pace. Let's look at Tuesday as the example. Bristol City defenders, when 𝗬𝗏 𝗵𝗵's on the pitch, start maybe a third into their own half. Because they know when United have got the ball, one quick pass behind them and 𝗬𝗏 𝗵𝗵 is away. They can't keep up with him. They can't stop him breaking on goal. He also makes really intelligent runs and movements. So from the first minute, he's trying to get him behind. He's bending his run. He's always trying to create that space and move the centre-halves around. So they've got nothing easy to be able to do. It also means that by forcing their defenders back, it's the same problem I talked about with United before. Their defenders drop deep to try and cover Campbell's run. Their midfield then stays on the halfway line, and there's a huge gap for United to begin to play in, win second balls, and really start to assert pressure on the opposition back line. You get Callum O'Hare playing in that little half space between defence and midfield, and United are able to control the game. We're on the front foot. We're pushing them backwards rather than just giving them an easy opportunity to find and control the ball. As soon as 𝗬𝗏 𝗵𝗵 goes off after an hour, because his fitness levels, and this is perfectly understandable given his injury history, but because he has to go off after an hour, what happens is Tom Cannon comes on, 𝗤𝗏𝗴 comes on, whoever it is, but instead their defenders go, they're not going to run me. They've not got the pace. So the defenders step forward to the halfway line and they say, right, try and play the ball in behind and I'll beat 𝗤𝗏𝗴 for pace. There's no way he's going to get the run on me. They've done the same whenever Tom Cannon's come on as well. They don't look at him and say he's going to burn me for pace. They back themselves to be able to sort out that problem and allow themselves to move forward to keep the pressure on. So now when the ball goes forward, instead of us having this gap between defence and midfield, if they win the first ball, the drop down immediately goes into the central midfielder because he's already on their toes. He doesn't have to come back. He's not facing his own goal. He can take the ball on the half turn and begin to play back into United's half, keeping United penned in. There's then a condensed space where United can't get out. There's no easy passes because they've got their lines all set within United's half. So that's why the 𝗬𝗏 𝗵𝗵 problem comes together, because he himself is fantastic and we cannot change. He has to start every game that it is possible and play every minute that we can get him to play because he's fantastic. He's a goal scorer. He's a problem. He really allows United to step forward and play on the front foot, but we have to find a way to make those changes in a more effective way. Now, the best way to do that for me is to put two strikers on at that point. 𝗤𝗏𝗴 needs somebody who's going to play with him. So either you put a second striker on, let's say Ryan Brewster, and he can then win the drop down and Brewster can chase it up, or you have to tell one of the midfielders that they've got to close that gap and they've got to be up close to make sure that when 𝗤𝗏𝗴 wins something, anything, you're there following it up. And it's not easy for their midfielders to just pick it up, recycle play and keep pushing United backwards again. We've seen in recent weeks, just on Tuesday night, Wednesday were 2-0 down, came back from that to win 3-2. They can keep going through games. They're resilient and they can come back at you even when they're coming from behind. So United have to be able to have a plan that if we're ahead after 60 minutes, we know how we're going to hold on to that lead and we're not just sitting back for 30 minutes inviting pressure, because that really cost us against Bristol City. That ultimately was the moment where the game flipped. It went from United having a threat, giving them something to think about, to them being able to just say, right, we're just going to come on to you. And eventually the pressure is going to tell. We're excellent at defending our box. We have got a fantastic structure and organisation. But while ever we invite pressure for the last 30 minutes, you're always more likely to concede goals. So let's make these changes in a proactive way that means that we can still control the game. We can still carry a threat ourselves, but we're not forcing 𝗬𝗏 𝗵𝗵 to play until he burns out because we know he needs that rest. So I think it's really difficult, but you've got to go up. You've got to keep yourself on top and not allow yourselves to be penned in. So they're the key lessons that I'm taking from Bristol City and the key ways United can just make sure that those little problems that we start to see within game are things that we can address. But what does that actually mean for Sunday? What's the conclusion here? Well, It's simple, to be honest. The logic for this one is simple. Sheffield United are a better team than Sheffield Wednesday. Regardless of what happens on Sunday, Sheffield United will be a minimum of 23 points in front of Sheffield Wednesday. As I've outlined above, Wednesday have ways that they can hurt United. They could switch it on, they could put in their best performance of the season, and they could really cause us a lot of problems, particularly in that central defensive area where with Michael Smith, they've got the one ability that United really struggle to counter, and that could hurt us. But if we play to our level, if United play their game the way that we know they can, we will win this. We have to recognise the risks that Wednesday carry. We have to consider adapting certain parts of our play to make sure that we can counter their threat and just make sure we've got that full control in the game without allowing chaos to start to come in. But ultimately, if we play our game, we will win this. If we cover the knockdowns and win the second balls off Michael Smith, if we cover the wing backs to make sure there's no easy way to get down and easy balls into the box, United can win this game. And if, when we're taking off Campbell, we just develop a bit of a plan B, make sure we can keep going forward and hold the ball up front, make sure we don't just get penned in and give ourselves an outlet, United will win this game of football. So there we have it, Blades. It's a big one. It's always a big one because this is Hillsborough. This is Wednesday. But more important than any of that, this is 3 points on our journey towards promotion and our journey back to the Premier League. This game in itself will not be season defining. We have 8 games left after this, and every single one of them is just as important as the one that happened before. This game doesn't decide if United are going to get automatic promotion or if Wednesday are going to get into the playoffs. That gets decided way, way down the line. But what Sunday does mean is it gives somebody the chance to make themselves an absolute hero. This can be the Sheffield United team that don't just beat Wednesday at Bramall Lane, that don't just do the double over Wednesday by beating them at Hillsborough as well. They could also be the team that do the double over Wednesday and get Sheffield United promoted. They could be the team that really achieve everything that we would have wanted at the start of the season if they turn up, if they put in a hell of a performance and they make sure that it's Saturday. Oh, no. If they make sure that on Sunday at 3 o'clock, we are still sat there. Everybody in red and white has a big old smile on their face. We're going into the international break knowing that we are still in the promotion spots, that it is in our hands and that we have full control over our destiny. They can take us there. So go out and become heroes.
Ole, ole, ole. Ole, ole, ole.